Hey everybody, my name is Devin Wood, and for those of you who don't know, I am a photographer, videographer, content creator, filmmaker, all those titles.
You know how it goes. Fill in the damn titles. Titles.
Now, I wanted to talk about some mental health stuff. I mean, honestly, I really mostly wanted to just set up an interview setup of myself in my own apartment. And that's why I've got two microphones here. I'm testing out this new mic that I've got out here. I've got my one camera, my second camera, some lights. So I really just wanted to see what I could really do like on my own in my apartment with just what I have. But I actually do have a very important message. And it is, of course, around the topic of mental health, particularly with men, but just mental health in general for anyone. I think it's incredibly important. I think thankfully it's becoming less and less taboo than it used to be. But to me, the way that I view mental health is I think we should treat our minds the same way that we should treat our cars. And I know that might sound a little crazy, but just bear with me. When you think about your car, right? Every so often you're supposed to get the brakes done, you get oil changes, you get tune-ups, you get it checked, you get it inspected if you live here in New York. Point is, you keep up with your car, you maintain your car, right? And when something goes wrong, you fix it. And I think we should be the same way with our minds. We should keep maintaining our minds. And that goes anywhere from doing things that we love and enjoy and find to be therapeutic and helpful to our mental health, all the way up to actually being in proper therapy and whatnot. Now, for just a little quick background on me, I would say, a pretty typical childhood growing up. I had some issues. My mother, who has now passed away, I'll get into that in a little bit. She dealt pretty much her whole life with substance abuse and addiction and things like that. So other than that, though, I mean, my grandparents raised me. I was always fed. I was always safe. I always had a place to sleep. So I was well taken care of. And yes, just like I think all of us, I had some childhood trauma. I dealt with a lot of things. There were things that I experienced that probably no 8, 10, 12-year-old should have experienced. But I would say overall it wasn't that bad. And honestly, through most of my life, like, I was a genuinely happy person. Now, I think all throughout high school, I was really angry on the inside. Like, I was a very angry person, and I harbored a lot of that on a daily basis. And if you knew me, you probably couldn't tell, because I was just this guy who was friends with everybody. I wanted to make everyone laugh and make everyone happy. I always wanted to have a good time. And there was definitely truth to that. That was really who I was to some degree. But ultimately, I think a lot of the things that I experienced as a child, which made me grow up very quickly, I think I resented people, particularly my mom and people in my family. I think I had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger for a lot of that stuff. I joke all the time that when I look back at my old Facebook statuses, I'm just like, who hurt you? Like, who was this kid versus who I am now? This kid who was just so angry all the time and mad at the world, and like, what happened to you? And the truth is, I never really actually, dove into that. I never actually tried to peel back and figure out what actually did happen to me. Like, I should say I know the things that happened to me full well. I have complete memory of all the things that ever happened to me as a child, but rather, I guess, how did those things actually affect me and shape me, especially going into adulthood? But let's fast forward. I get out of high school and I am genuinely, like, I've grown up a bit. I'm a very happy person. Like, honestly, pretty much for almost the entirety of my 20s, I've been a very happy person. Like, for those of you who know me, whether it's in person or online or whatever the case is, like, I really just like to make people laugh. I love to laugh. I like to try a bunch of different things. I'm into all sorts of stuff. I'm a nerd. I like to have fun. Like, I'm very upbeat. I'm incredibly social. And that really is genuinely the person I am. And because of that, and because of the fact that I am lucky enough to have had such a good support system for my entire life, one thing about me, I've always put very good people around me. So my friends, my family, I mean, everybody who I spend time with, honestly, is usually helpful, is usually there for me. Like, I'm very fortunate to say I have a laundry list of people who have had my back and have supported me, who I can lean on. And I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. And a lot of people, it's hard to even find one person who can do that. And so because of that, it's not lost on me. I'm always grateful for the support system I have. And I understand that they are essentially, the foundation of why I have been able to be such a happy, upbeat person for most of my life. Now, let's just pretty much skip through most of my 20s from, let's say, 21 to like last year, right? Just honestly happy dude, have regular stress and struggles like anybody does, but sincerely a very happy, upbeat, positive, social butterfly type of person. And that was who I was. And it worked well for a very long time. That is until my mom passed away in May of last year. My mom passing away, I mean, first of all, it was my first time truly really dealing with grief. I've lost, family members and friends, but obviously my mom it's a different type of grief. I think it's, the magnitude is a lot greater naturally, and it was something that I had never even come close to experiencing before, and it was the first thing that I think really kind of put a chink in the armor. And what I mean by that is that honestly, like I said, for most of my life, I've been a very happy, positive person. I've been able to deal with a lot of the things that I've had to deal with alone or, with the support of people if I've felt that way. And it was pretty much fine. And honestly, like that worked for a very long time. And I was this, like, in my own mind, I'm this like superhero for not only, I think, my childhood self, but for everybody else around me. Like, I've always been the person whose mental health was good. And because of that, I'm able to, help other people, help them get through the things that they're getting through, and actually, be of value to people who are in, a time of need. And it really worked. Like, I enjoy that. I love that. And like I said, I think subconsciously that was always me. Like, I think my response to my own trauma was to be this superhero in everyone else's life, because I felt like somehow if I could be this protector, this savior, whatever you want to call it, to people, then that would fill the gap of having that very specific person in my life, which I always lacked, I felt like. And I've tried to explain this to people before, and it probably won't make sense, but like growing up, I never really felt unsafe, but I never felt safe. Like, I never felt comfortable. I never felt like truly like I could just be myself and things would be okay. Like, for those of you who know, when you're dealing with, people who have struggled with substance abuse, one thing that you can probably relate to is that a lot of your life feels like waiting for, the other shoe to drop. It feels like you're just constantly waiting for the next thing to go wrong. This person's in jail, or this person hurt themselves, or they got, in some kind of trouble or something, or that they're dead. And that's something I dealt with forever. It's something I still deal with now, even with my mother being gone. But just to kind of put it into perspective, getting that phone call that she had passed, which happened actually when I was not here. I was over in Phoenix visiting a friend of mine, which also made it a much different experience, not immediately being here and being next to family. And getting that call was the exact nightmare that I always dreamt that it would be. It was just a gut-wrenching experience. I had like just woken up, so it's weird to come out of a sleep and hear something like that as well. It's like trying to process a lot of stuff in a very short period of time after you just woke up out of a deep sleep it's an interesting experience, to say the least. But with that being said, long story short, I know I've been rambling a bit here, just to give you some context about me and the things I've experienced, but the reason I'm making this is because I think it's very important for all of us to start giving a lot more attention to our own and other people's mental health. Losing my mother and then losing my grandfather a few months after, which I won't go into that, but again, losing two of the closest people in my life within a 5 or 6 month span was just a lot. And it prompted me to finally get into therapy, because I finally had to look myself in the mirror and say, you are not this superhero. You're not invincible, and that's okay. That was probably the hardest part for me, was like forgiving myself for not being okay. And I think that's something a lot of people experience and a lot of people struggle with, is forgiving ourselves and allowing ourselves to be hurt and to be vulnerable, because we think that it's, we've been taught to believe that it's a sign of weakness, when in actuality, I think it's actually the strongest thing you can do is say, I need help. And so that's what I did. And I got into therapy for the very first time ever at 28 years old. And it was honestly a fantastic experience. I got really lucky. I got someone who I think matched well with me right out of the gate. But I knew going in, and something I've been telling people a lot since, is that, it's not always that easy. A lot of times it's probably not. And it's usually a long, difficult road to find a good, stable therapist. But it's so worth it when you do. And I know it can be intimidating to have to like shop around for a therapist, but at the end of the day, I think it's well worth taking the time, because once you have that person, and once you have a plan and outline and resources and tools that you can use to help keep your mental health, well, it's invaluable. I always say it's weird, like for me at the age of 28, 29 was my first time experiencing a lot of things like, real anxiety, depression, things like that. Feeling like I just didn't want to be here. Not in the sense that I wanted to take my life, but just in the sense that I wanted to just disappear and not talk to anyone or see anyone. Like all of those feelings and emotions were incredibly foreign to me. And while on one hand, I'm incredibly blessed that I didn't experience that for most of my life, it's also a very weird thing to be going through those things for the first time so late in life. Most people, unfortunately, from like their teenage years, sometimes even earlier, are experiencing a lot of those emotions and feelings. And so even though it's a struggle in and of itself to be dealing with that for such a long period of time, in some ways you also become more used to it, and I think you're better equipped to handle it as it arises. Whereas for me, it's like as a grown ass man, I'm like 28, 29, I'm like, wow, what, this is depression? Like, what is that like? I'm the dude who's always doing stuff. I want to be somewhere, everywhere, all the time with everyone, and I work 5 different jobs and I want to do this and do that. And all of a sudden, like, I can't get off my couch. Like, it was a very weird thing for me to experience. Whew. Yeah, this video has been a long time coming. So needless to say, before I get too far into like who I am and I'm sitting here for hours and hours, again, the point of this video is just that I think we need to give a lot more attention and resources to our mental health. And not only that, but I think we need to be a lot more proactive in our approach to mental health in general. I think far too often we are reactive. We're like, oh my God, this person attempted suicide, or this person is having suicidal thoughts, or this person did something absolutely crazy and ridiculous and out of character. Now it's time to focus on mental health. But why? Why do we wait that long? Why do we wait until something terrible happens to be like, oh, this is a problem, let's address it? When in reality, we all know that those things exist. We all know that the antecedents for those problems have been there all along, and we can and should do something about that before it gets out of hand. In fact, I honestly strongly believe that therapy and attention to mental health is actually the most important when you're doing well. I think that this is because when you're doing well, we have a tendency to let our guard down and we're like, okay, cool, things are fine, let's let it rock. Everything's gravy. If something happens, I'll come back, right? That's how we all handle it. But what if while we're doing well, we actually instead said, hey, I'm doing well. This is a way better opportunity for me to really address these things, learn more about these things, learn more about how to deal with them, the tools that I can use to do so. That is the best moment, because if you think about it, a lot of times by the time we get into therapy or into a facility or whatever the case is, depending on your situation, we're probably in a crisis, right? We're probably like, oh shit, this is real serious. I'm really struggling. Things are not okay. I'm not okay. I need to do something. And so imagine being in that position as it is, and then on top of that, trying to get into therapy, trying to get help, trying to establish all that, then trying to figure out, why am I this way? Why do I think this way? Why do I feel that way? Like, it's incredibly overwhelming for anybody. So why not instead say, okay, let's get ourselves to a better point. And then once we're there, that's when you dig in. Once you're doing well, that's when you really start to say, okay, what's going on here? Let's unravel all this. Let's try to get to the bottom of it and figure out how we can protect ourselves from this happening again. And like I said, I'll reference the superhero thing again. I don't think any of us are immune, even when we are doing our best. Nobody's immune, and that's okay. That's human nature. We are human beings, and that is how our brains and our minds function. I don't think there's anything you can do to fully prevent or exclude yourself from a lot of these negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But I think for damn sure we can be doing a lot more to prepare ourselves for when those things arise. And that really, to me, is kind of the emphasis of this ramble that I'm on now, which is to take care of ourselves, take care of the people we love, check in on people, check in on yourself. We don't do that enough either. Check in on yourself. Say, am I actually doing okay? And if not, like, what do I need to do to be doing better? Just give mental health the time and the intention and the resources that it so desperately needs in society today. Okay, I think that's about it. I can't believe I set all this up really mostly just to play around with some new toys, but also to deliver a message, because for me, this is my therapy. Sitting in front of a camera and talking is the absolute best way I know how to express myself. So if you're still here and you've stuck with me rambling for however long this is, thank you very much. I appreciate you. And if you need help, I'll put resources down below in the description or whatever the case is. You are more than welcome to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff, and that's about it. I hope we all start doing better.